and welcome to a new episode of the Dynasty Mind. My name is Chris Chung at FF Dynasty 101. This is a feature from FakePigSkin, and tonight I am delighted to be joined by Professor John Bush, who is also one of our staff writers. Dr. Bush, how are you doing tonight?
Excellent, Chris. Thanks for that.
Absolutely. I've been wanting to have you on for the longest time because the things that you put on our site, the things that you preach through Twitter or in any sort of media has been very beneficial for us in the way we think about fantasy football. And absolutely, I just want to dig into your fantasy football mind. So tell me a little bit about yourself, John, and how have you gotten involved into fantasy football?
Okay. So I'm a scientist, a biologist, have a PhD in cell biology, molecular biology. I study an amoeba. How about that? The amoeba is called slime mold. So that's my Hotmail account, slimemold@hotmail.com. You can reach me at many accounts, but yeah, so Slimy Dr. Bush, that's me. I teach genetics, molecular biology, virology, forensics. I have graduate students. I help them get PhDs. We do research. They're working now. I published maybe 40 articles in scientific journals. They're reviewed, and these are, and I'm a full professor of biology at a nearby university, and that's kind of who I am. I got my first degrees in zoology, so I was kind of an animal person. Then I kind of got into DNA and proteins.
Wow.
So I kind of evolved that way.
Oh, my God.
So as far as fantasy, I have a league that my first league we're still in. It's called Science Hell, and everybody in there's a PhD or an MD or like a lawyer, some professional. And so these folks are, they may not be the best fantasy players, but they're no dummies.
Man.
And it's hard to beat them. Yeah, it's called Science Hell. And so in I think it was 2004 I started playing, didn't know anything. I came from from my data experience from horse racing. I've been trying to beat those horses, and I think that I ended up buying them too much hay and feed and not enough in my pocket. But I had good years and bad years. I've filled out some W-2Gs in my lifetime. Those are withholding forms that you have to pay at the track. Uncle Sam wants their take in our winnings, just like if you win enough in fantasy football, you will have to fill out a W-2G form and donate to Uncle Sam. So I came from a data-wise horse racing, so I would use my scientific prowess as it was to try to beat the ponies, and it's a very complex system, just like fantasy football. And complex systems, it's like the blind men trying to explain the elephant. One's got a tail, one's got the ear, and they're trying to tell you about it. And it's really hard. And that's what makes a lot of people do a lot of things in fantasy. There's all these different ways to carve the turkey. So I think that's what I like about it, is there's no right way. I mean, the only right way is if money is your object, then to make money. That's it, your ROI, right? What you invest in, if you win more over the long haul, right? Yep. And you just got to decide. And if it's for fun, then have fun. But I was thrust into with a bunch of sharks, and took advantage of me, beat me up the first year. The second year, I was in the title and lost, and then I've actually won 4 titles since then. And
nice.
It's about $500 to win. So I could lose quite some time and still be ahead of those guys. So I was the commissioner. I learned to be a commissioner there, and so that's how I cut my teeth. I started my blog because I realized I wanted to do independent research. And so the book that you're talking about, I published the first copy in 2015. And so I had 2016 and 17. And look, you're not going to be rich selling books on Kindle. I'm telling you, Chris, don't try it. Do not quit your day job. But guess what it does? Chris, it makes me do the work from basically after the title game in into December all the way till, and I'm still working now, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm just putting it on FakePigSkin. So it makes me do the research. And that is why I do everything I do. It's not for my readers. It's actually for me. I'm selfish that way.
And we get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, John, and because you have really tried to maybe perhaps simplify such a complex game. The game is simple to learn, simple to play, but hard to master, and you're fitting into an interesting time today in the fantasy football.
Yeah.
I didn't start much later than you. I started around my fantasy football career around in 2005. So
yeah,
I didn't have a lot of the background in that too, but I'm very much happy to see that we had a similar kind of trend, and we pushed through all these different growths, all these different ways of thinking about fantasy football, and you seem to be ahead of your time at the time when you wrote this book. And to be a microbiologist, I can just imagine all the degrees that you might hold, or at least that one degree that you hold. It brings so much different perspective to the game of fantasy football, and you're incorporating what your expertise in that. You might say that you're trying to be selfish in writing this, but I think with just digging into your mind will be beneficial to us all. Now, John, quickly, before, if I'm not mistaken, you are more so heavily on seasonal, or have you jumped into the Dynasty world yet?
I am never played Dynasty but one time, and this was before I interacted with Dave Cherney, who kind of I listened to a lot, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was taking these older players, and I mean, the people were doing rookies. Like, what the hell is going on? I mean, the whole mindset. Dynasty players buy and have a mortgage on the players. If you're playing, seasonal, you're renting. And so coming from a renting perspective, jump directly in, it's like, well, I could just throw that person away. I don't have to keep it. It's not an anchor on. It's just a completely different mindset, and I'm starting to learn that, but I've not tried it seriously since the one league where I got my butt kicked. And but what was funny was I actually had drafted in whichever season, David Johnson. It's like, I don't know how I did it. I guess I got lucky. I'm not sure I knew how I did that, but I did it. So I left somebody an orphan that I know they could build on, but I was used to winning every season, and I wasn't used to playing the long game. Yeah. Delayed gratification. Dynasty players are great at delayed, and I applaud you. I need my candy this year. So that's why I haven't got back into Dynasty. Dave Cherney's trying to get me back in, but I don't know. I'm still resisting, but I probably will try it. Or maybe, Chris, if you start a league, So basically I'm volunteering to get into the shark pool once again. But I'm telling you, Dynasty, it's amazing. I see these Debbie leagues. I think that's where they track college play. Yes. I don't know how you have time. I mean, you've got to, if you're going to do it right, you've got to live it, eat, breathe it 24/7. And even I'm just so busy with other things. I just don't think I could do it like some of the best ones do. Dynasty.
I think I can really understand what a professor teaching at a university, you don't really afford that much time, especially when you have to care for other PhD students. I being myself, I know I put my mentor through a lot just to get through my dissertation. So I can appreciate that. So yes, there is a aspect of Dynasty where you need to be patient, but I also haven't abandoned the seasonal formats because, like you said, it does give me that that rush that I can apply some of the winnings and I can see the immediate results. I also try to fix my impatientness with daily fantasy sports. So I got all kinds of things to kind of keep me busy. But it is rewarding to see a team grow. And I have a couple of teams that are on the upswing. I've demolished them. I've done a poor job, but that's how I learn best, by making mistakes. And I can see my mistakes. They follow me year to year. It's not pleasant. But eventually maybe I'll get you back in. This year I'm kind of maxed out, but next year we'll hopefully start one for our Fake Pigskin fellows. So John,
that would be great.
Yeah.
I'll get in with the Sharks. At least it's people I know chewing on me.
And that is the best kind of fun that we can have, is playing with people that we know, that we can have talk trash with, and that we know at the end of the day we're all in for the joy of fantasy football. Now, John, just quickly, what has been your sense of this off season? You've prepared way ahead of time, more so than any other redrafters that I've known.
Yeah.
What has been the off season been for you?
Well, when I start, like I said, basically January, I'm starting to do, and Dave, he can tell you, I would send him a chapter and let him edit, and this season, well, let's go back. 2015, the year of the poor running back, I actually walked right into that trend with the zero running back. So I collected so much bucks then that I'm still living off 2015. Just everything I touched that year turned to gold. 2016 was about a break even, and 2017 taught me an interesting lesson that if you play in the title against Gurley, you're going to lose.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
if you look back at week 16, I was in like 12 playoffs, and I think 8 of them I was fighting him, and I got cleaned. My clock got cleaned, and I didn't lose a lot of money, but I lost. That was my first losing year since I've been. And so sometimes you can make, and you'll like this, make the right decision but get the wrong outcome. And so people need to realize that. In other words, coming into a decision, this is the best decision I can make, but it doesn't always come to the right outcome. I mean, people try to say they're the same, and they're not. And so that's something you have to deal with at the psychological level, dealing with that. And that's something that there were chapters in my book on biases. There's a lot of people talking biases, but it's sometimes I wonder how deep they get. I've shared my file on Evernote, that software, and I just said, you and Dave, and so I don't know if you ever get time to read that, but when I find an interesting article, I save it in my Dynasty and Redraft skills. And so every article that I find that has any applicability, any, traveling, any place, I can just quickly, hey, this looks good, I'll come back to it later. So I'm trying to go outside, looking at psychology, looking at business, investments, how do business people, basically, how do you make decisions under uncertainty? That's my I want to learn to do that. And that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You hit a nail on the head. People know these words. They throw out the words biases, confirmation biases, recency biases, but the depth of it sometimes is missing when I listen to how they explain what these biases are and how they want to control for them. It's very superficial in a lot of ways. So hopefully your next book, or maybe the things that you can put out, would teach us some more on how we can reflect on ourselves. That is an absolutely fantastic point where you said that we make the right decision with the wrong results does not mean we made the wrong decision.
Right. So going to the racetrack, you bet the best horse, but maybe he gets boxed in. Maybe he doesn't like mud. Maybe whatever. The jockey, he had a hard night. at the bar the night before and he's not riding his best. All you can do is make the best outcome, best decision, and hope for the best outcome. And it doesn't always work that way.
And I might get you into daily fantasy sports because those processes, those concepts are so applicable in every single week when I have to set up my lineup. So, John, let's head into our main topics. You have been involved in a lot of the statistical realm, and I said that you are coming into an interesting point in fantasy football because now a lot has changed in the industry. The statistics, analysis, models, all have been have driven how we view and how we analyze and how we develop our strategies in fantasy football. But through this sea of numbers, through this sea of models, a lot are still uncertain for someone like myself who is not studied in the statistical arts. I may have a basic idea. I may have some undergraduate level course. Well, I actually have more than that, but most of us don't really have the understanding of statistics and analysis and what they mean, but we only consume all these writings out there that are being put out there. What advice would you give to newbies who really want to fully understand and utilize statistics in a way that is meaningful for them in fantasy football?
Right. Okay. So let's step back. I think a newbie needs to find where they're comfortable at, and a way that they can chart their progress is, let's call it a diary, and just keep track of waiver wires and drafts and decisions, and write down why did you do what you did? Was it a model? Was it a piece of data? And that's the first step, is try to find out what's answering to you. Unless you're a 24/7 stat person, it's hard to deal with the laws of large numbers and distributions. And in fantasy football, we have 17 games plus postseason. That's not a lot of reps. And so the stats we have are limited by, just the events. So I know some of these model people try to do multiple iterations. They try to use various mathematical ways to simulate, 100 games played like this, or 100 seasons. It's just, garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. You're a prisoner. And so I think if I'm a newbie, the first thing you need to understand is there is no one model that is true. If it was, everybody would use it. It's common knowledge, right? So at the racetrack, if there was one way to do it, nobody can win money in a pari-mutuel system, right? Somebody has to lose, and that's in fantasy football. So that's one thing that I would think about was, the stats are not as solid as people may believe, because these pundits, they put that out. That was their title, to try to get you in to read it. And, that's their job, not necessarily to be right. So you should think about what questions drove them to do the model. So is that the best model for the question? And there's a lot of different statistical ways to do things. And what I think we know as the public is probably not what's out there. I think there are probably syndicates and groups, especially in daily fantasy, that probably have a lot of sophisticated modeling that we won't hear about. I know in horse racing, there was a group in Hong Kong that were making hand over fist. They actually did it by inventing their own metrics, and they would have people inventing new ways of seeing the game, and so they had data that nobody else had. So some of these groups try to keep that under wraps. So I'm not sure we know the best that's out there, Chris. I just don't think so. I think they're hidden and making money, and they're not going to tell us unless we're a member of the group.
Right.
I don't know if did I answer your question? I'm not sure. I kind of went roundabout there.
No, I mean, you're touching on an important things that statistics, models, everything is driven by whoever is putting them out there. They have a better understanding of it, of course, but they also must know their models and analysis. They have limitations. These are all theories based, because as I understand regressions, as I understand multiple regressions or analysis of a variance, there are some limitations to it because certain assumptions must be held, and those are not talked about when people present their models to the general public.
Yeah. Is the data normally distributed? That's a big thing.
Right.
If you don't know that, then you, like you say, you could take the hammer to the screw instead of the nail. You're using the wrong tool.
Absolutely. So
that's some of it. So they need to understand, just because there's a model doesn't mean this is it. I just blindly listen to it. That would be my advice. Do not find what works for you.
Yeah.
And then if you just dying to know this, there's plenty of places like Coursera, some of these other places that for cheap amounts of money you could enroll and start learning some basics. Learn how to do Excel, do some pivot tables, do some fun stuff there. Just see how the plot data. That's what I do. I like color and I like plotting data.
Yeah.
I'm very colorful and I like it, and I try to at least explain, but I don't like to come off as this is it. Drop your, put your blinders on, forget everything else. This is just one avenue.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. And you've answered my next question, actually, kind of advising what people would do. Would you advise them to learn about the statistics, or at least the basics, or would you turn them to a different source where they can find a better way of applying some of these models and some of these projections out there? So with that said,
well, Chris, before you go, the person who's doing this needs to decide kind of early, is this for fun or is this for real? Because if it's for real, then you need to go learn. If it's for fun, then have a great time. Have some pizza and beer and just kick it back.
Yeah.
But if this is something that eats at your soul, like a lot of us, then you got to learn and you got to read, and you'll waste a lot of time reading stuff that really doesn't apply. But I don't know. Right now, I don't know how else to do it other than just keep digging around. You look for that truffle, if you're the data pig, like our little piggies, and we're digging for those data truffles.
Hey, right? That's what we are. That's what Reagan put us together
That's
to
right.
do.
That's right.
Absolutely, yeah. And one example that just came to mind today, just even today, there was a big crowd that is called the #NeverJulio crowd, because they have their statistics to back their claims as to don't draft Julio Jones because of X, Y, and Z. And then another person came up with a statistical analysis of why you should be drafting Julio, and that how the people have been misusing their statistics. So a lot of confusion can go on if people don't even understand why or where. So
yeah, Chris, I knew we were going to get to this point, so let me take you to a study that was done in horse racing.
Perfect.
It's called the informed minority is the concept. So what a horse racing pundit did was looked at some of the experts, and he noticed that when one of, say, out of 3 or 4 went in a different direction, that they actually won maybe less but made more money because, they're seeing something that the crowd's not seeing. So if you have a group of people, there's going to be people that are seeing things differently, and that's actually good. In other words, if I was serious about daily fantasy, I think you need a group of people to do certain chores, right? I'm not sure one person can be an expert in, kickers or defenses or how Vegas odds affect. I mean, there's a lot of different expertise that needs to be in the daily fantasy gumbo. And for, I'm not sure anybody, unless you got AI or something, Terminator robot running your programs. I don't know what else. So I think that's what draws people together is they try to distribute the labor and somebody becomes an expert at whatever. And I think there's syndicates out there. It's just they're not going to tell you about it.
Absolutely not. It's a formula that is consistent for them, and it's consistently helping them. Not saying that it's perfect or that they're going to win 100%, but they're winning more than the field.
Yes,
so to speak. Awesome. Thank you so much. That is actually something that you guys need to pay attention to. Listen to it. Go investigate how it works and take that into heart and into mind. Nobody can do everything alone, nor is there one method, whether it's statistics or film watching, that is the golden ticket to winning. So now putting things together, and you've been already digging, like you mentioned, since January, and you've been preparing. We are in July, friend. We're very close to the season starting. What have your research taught you about 2018, and how are you going to prepare for it?
Okay. That's a big question, Chris. Good question, big question. Right now, I'm heavily into Bestball formats, and I've probably done maybe 100 or so. I'm getting notifications even as we're speaking on the Draft app, and then the My Fantasy League. I had a lot of money left over from last year at My Fantasy League, so I'm just kind of blowing through that. So for Bestball, that's been my mindset. I really haven't turned to Redraft yet, and like I said, the only Dynasty I've done, before I forget about it, Dave Cherney and he's inspired me to look at, in that chapter, and I don't know if since you're a Dynasty guy, you may have seen that, where I look at lifespans of different players over multiple years and just kind of follow cohorts and kind of see year to year what's going on. And I think there's some surprising information. There's a lot of surprising information in the book, and it's not common. And, in fact, I didn't know if I want to, so like I said, I put the book out, but some part of me says, well, do I really want people to know this? And I asked Dave, should I say this? And he'll say, no, save it in case you and I want to do something. Okay. So, I don't even put everything out that I have. But anyway, so Bestball, it's always this value versus the price versus, what you're looking for as far as value. So you have to guess. And, of course, some of it is your draft position, right? Are you draft number 1 or draft 12? I'll do some simulations and, just kind of for my knowledge, and I think I published one already this year for Bestball, just kind of if you took every player starting at pick 1, what would you end up with? Pick 2, and you just kind of estimate the value and just, where does the natural success fall this year? And believe it or not, even though, some years especially when running backs do well, early positions do well. When there's a lot of injuries, go back to 2015, there was a lot of running back injuries that year. And what was interesting about 2017, last year, like the early part of your draft was very formidable, but it kind of fell apart later. And in 2016, it was kind of opposite that. And in 2015, it was really bad for running back. So what I'm saying is the last 3 years, we've had 3 different results. Grand results. So you're asking me, what is 18? Wow. It's, usually our human selves, when we have 2 things that come together, we consider that a pattern, which is not necessarily true, but people feel that way. or if it's consistent, right? But, you know, in the stock market, they've done some ideas where stocks that always go up and then fall have a more dramatic fall than stocks that go up and down, because people expect there's volatility so they don't get nervous. But when, I don't know, Facebook all of a sudden drops, people are going crazy. It's like, what? It's never dropped like this.
Right.
Let's sell. I mean, you know, the herd mentality, the fight or flight hits you to realize there's emotions there that are driving it. But to me, 2018, I'm kind of expecting, you know, a good year for running backs. I mean, can you predict if I could predict injuries, I could for sure answer your question, Chris. So I've been drafting, trying to balance, but sometimes the draft just says draft running backs or draft wide receivers a lot. I just do it. I follow what I'm given a lot of times. So I don't have a plan, and I don't, you must, you know, on the fourth pick, always grab a running back.
Mm-hmm.
This year in Bestball, the fourth round tends to be wide receiver. I even plotted that. What I think is, and I don't know what article that was, but it looks like predator-prey relationship. People will draft running backs, then they'll run to wide receivers, then they'll run back to running. I mean, you can almost predict what they're going to do based on how the draft went. So people are always kind of getting nervous. It's a cognitive bias that occurs in fantasy football, the out-of-balance feeling, that tendency that if you've drafted 4 wide receivers in a row, that you can't grab a fifth one. Mm-hmm. And that's a scare. I mean, that you want to find out who's brave, find people that can do 5 or 6 in a row. That's pretty brave or stupid. Depends on after the battle, right? Whoever writes the history books, whether it was good or bad. But I'm, assuming no injuries, it looks to me like running backs are, should be getting their due this year. So I'm balancing out. I'm trying to be balanced first couple, and I probably unbalance myself mid to late. In Bestball, I'm, about round 10, I start doing a pattern. I start picking up tight ends and quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. I like to have 3 of each. That's just my personal feeling in Bestball. So I don't know if I answered your question, Chris, because that's a hard question. It's a great question. And how you use that kind of question, Chris, is use that as a springboard to ask other questions. So break down some parts of that question. Okay, so let's just focus on running backs this year. What's happened the last few years? And it's been really chaotic, as you would predict. And running backs are chaotic. In my chapters, I follow, kind of down through the draft, and then so I do ADP, and then preseason. What happened to them, and there's a lot of. It's not perfect, or if it was, everybody would just stick to ADP and that'd be it. Yeah. But it's not. It's not perfect, and people are now. I hear the stat, Gurley's number 1, and we've never had a number 1 come back to back since, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. Is that a real stat? I don't know. It's kind of like flipping heads or tails. I don't know. Absolutely. So I guess I'm not running away from wide receivers or running backs, but I'm definitely, my data suggests late quarterbacks, our barbell approach for tight ends in Bestball. I either grab the first couple or I wait way late and grab 3 or 4 to try to balance it out. Kind of a streaming approach, but for Bestball. Mm-hmm. But for wide receivers and running backs, I try to keep it fairly balanced the first each to kind of get the core, and then I may go on a run, grab every running back I can for a while, and then flip to receivers. I think there's easier to see wide receivers this year that could have some real good impact. I think a guy named, I know we're talking about players, but Geronimo Allison is somebody. Gallup is somebody. There, a lot of the sharps are finding those, already telling you that.
Yeah.
But the ADPs don't seem to be reflecting. But some of the running backs that you find late, they have to have some injuries. They need help. They're going to need some help, and so you probably should draft one or two, assuming, but it's guessing. Who's going to get injured? I mean, there was some website a few years ago, I don't even know if they're around anymore, they actually claimed to be able to predict probabilities of injuries. That was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still around, but I was thinking, if you're that good, why are you messing with fantasy football? I'd be at the stock market or, at Vegas. I'd be doing there's more money in the stock market than fantasy football. I assure you. If you can predict injuries and stocks, wow, that was good.
And that will bring you a great combination, and you shouldn't be messing around with fantasy football. You should be messing around with stock. And, of course, we can never predict injuries, but we do help ourselves prepare for it. Certain players I know have you want the extra preparations for it. Some people might fight me on guys like Greg Olson and Jordan Reed today. I just said, for me, and this does come down to a personal way of roster management. Is for me, I'm okay if I see the cliff coming. I can prepare for it rather than picking a guy where I have no idea when the cliff is gonna come.
Yeah. If you look at my book, there's some indications of that kind of answers to questions, and so in your spare time you might go. I think it'll help you in Dynasty. Dave thought they were some pretty good, looking at lifespans across multiple years, and there's some surprising stuff in there.
Yeah, we definitely could learn a lot from your work, even though you didn't write it with a Dynasty lens in mind. We have to remember that the in-season is a big part of Dynasty as well, because we don't make all these decisions in a vacuum and win in the offseason. There's nothing we can do in the offseason but make sure that we have the correct asset to prepare ourselves, much like, have your draft in July and then, have to parade throughout the season. That's a lot of important nuggets that you put in there, and I want to highlight the one that is very important. You touch on the human process of the human process of being driven by fear, emotions, or self-preservation in a draft. Exactly.
I'm scared that I'm out of balance. I don't have a good quarterback. And it's like the little angel or devil on your shoulder whispering the whole time.
Yes.
It's like Rodgers just went. And then all of a sudden Brady's gone. And then your pressure builds, and sometimes, I'll just take, the next one. I got to grab something before they're gone. It's the same thing in an apocalypse, right? That last thing of bread. Down here in the South, here in Alabama, when it starts to snow, milk and bread are gone.
Oh, gone.
There's none in the stores. I mean, people, it's like moon dust. They've never seen this stuff on the ground.
Right.
Down here in the South, it's moon dust. We don't know what it does or how to walk on it or how to drive in it. It's just something foreign.
Oh man, that is hilarious and very accurate about the human processes. And these things, even if we're aware of it, sometimes it can catch us off guard. And these processes. So these processes are what I'm seeing right now.
So what I do, Chris, hate to interrupt. Sometimes I'm old and I forget. The reason I do slow drafts is because I have more time to be thoughtful. I don't do well in fast. I feel like I should have done that. And I get some doubts, and then by the end of the draft, I'm kind of loopy. And it's just like, I don't feel satisfied, where if I've got 6 hours, 4 hours, 8 hour pick, I feel like, hey, I must have got all I needed in this pick. I don't feel as regretful, so it doesn't psychologically whip me in my brain so I can do another one. So I deliberately do slow drafts. So I guess some of the big money I know is drafts, in live time. And so I'll probably have a hard time. That'd be another transition. How do you do that?
Yes, and we'll definitely continue to talk about ways we can help ourselves, because I know a lot of the seasonal draft happens live. You get 2 minutes or under the
That's
gun.
tough. That is tough, Chris. You're going to miss something somewhere, somehow. In the cool reflection as you look, and by the way, for everybody, regardless of how you think, when you look at your team, it's going to look better than if you ask everybody in your league to look at your team, and they're going to see the flaws.
Yep.
That's just human nature. Whatever I have is better than yours. But you look at theirs, oh, well, look, you did this. You can spot the flaws. So that's when you have a group in like DSS that you can actually debate some of these fine points. Like, is this the stack we want?
Mm-hmm.
You need that minority voice to come in there and try to break it up and say, no, we need to step away here. But when you're by yourself in 2 minutes, you just don't have that luxury.
Absolutely. These are the processes I need you guys to pay attention to because it creeps on you so quickly, so automatically.
Oh, boy.
But
Scary.
When you take time to think in a very as objective as you can be, you will begin to see where what part of your team you can prepare for, if you can spot the weakness, and where you can build on your strength from. So in talking about that, we have a rush. The season of football is very short. It ranges from September to January, but the fantasy football is even shorter. What has been your successful process, John, to help you through September through December to that winning your league?
Okay. If you remember, early in my book, I talk about percentage of winning teams comes from the draft. And somewhere, there's been people say it's 50 to 60 or so percent, but I actually wanted to do the data. So I think I did about 50 MFL 25s. I don't know if they're going to run those this year. These had weekly season managed, no trading, but you could it wasn't Bestball because you could set your lineup. So I did 50 of them last year just to test that. And what I found was about 50%, when I looked at my teams, about 50% of the teams that did well came from the draft, and the other were the waiver wire pickups. And so it's half the battle. The draft is not insignificant, but it's not – you can't just sit back and loaf the rest of the season on your draft. So, and I know in Dynasty, you guys are 24/7. Every new piece of data, okay, what does that mean for the fifth running back down? Somebody's got in trouble. Does he move up to fourth or third, or is he going to get traded? I know you guys have got to process a lot of this information. So there's a lot of information flying at you quickly. And Chris, there was in my book, I talk about the amount of information. Does it help you in accuracy? And so they actually did some sports bettors, horse racing people, and some basketball game bettors. And they gave them 10 pieces of information and let them predict outcomes. And then they gave them 50 pieces. What they found was that there was, as a group, no difference in accuracy, but everybody's confidence was, or a lot of people's confidence was very high with more information. So they felt better, but they weren't even more accurate. So do realize, and the audience needs to think about it, there is going to be some point where it's going to feel like I need to hear every blurb and every take on everything, but I'm not sure it's going to increase what you're doing. You need to find out for yourself what it works for you. And I don't know what that might be. Maybe it's, rankings or what clicks it for you, or maybe, depth charts, looking at memorizing. I don't know, but you need to find your own path. And that's part of the human side, is just kind of think about who you are and where, what's the key for you to unlock success. That's why I keep a diary and I go back at the end of the season and try to look at things. Like last year I looked and I said, I was drafting too many quarterbacks too early. Because if you look at my chapters, quarterbacks, their slope going down the draft board as far as end of season is not as dramatic as running backs and wide receivers, and so you can get almost say 80% at QB 15 than Aaron Rodgers or whoever it is this year. So if you can make it up with good picks and running backs and wide receivers, instead of picking Aaron Rodgers, you picked a really good running back. You can make that up by picking a late one. So that's a scary thing. Like I said, some people love the quarterback, and they just got to have one. And I'm just saying, my data says go late. So everything in Bestball, about the 11th, I do the draft app, and we get 18 rounds. And so about 9, 10, 11, I'll start looking at who's around. Yeah, if they're going to let Brady slip to the 8th, I might pick him up a little early. And I actually did. I think of about in 100, I think I have Brady once or twice because they let him slip. Because everybody starts hearing late. So they don't know why. They just hear late quarterback. Well, why?
Yep.
Well, I've got the data, and it told me the why. So I'm satisfied with that approach, just like the barbell with tight ends. You do the trend line, and it's kind of like, as far as you look at risk, it's kind of low risk, early, high risk, mid, and low risk. And remember, when you pay little for something and it doesn't do but a little bit, that's really not a lot of risk. You're not expecting a lot. So you probably should think about streaming and whatnot and say tight ends. And so I plan to stream tight ends unless, it just lands that Gronk's there, at almost the third round, maybe third round. Okay, early third, late second, okay. I may be feeling kind of crazy and say, okay, I'll do it. But your draft team looks different when you just do a mock and pick, say, Kelsey, Ertz, or take pick 2 of the 3 or go, early, and just kind of see what's left. You'll see, it's like, wow, do I want to take a risk with this?
Yeah.
There's a price to be paid.
Absolutely.
That was one thing. I changed my game this year. I'm comfortable with late quarterbacks now for the first time.
Great.
And I haven't been as comfortable. But that means but I do have data that suggests that if you are going to wait, try to find some quarterbacks that can run a little bit, because that can help balance things out. Maybe they're late because they're not so good at passing, but maybe they can get you, like a Tyrod Taylor. I mean, he's going, for as long as he lasts, he'll get you some running points. I mean, I wouldn't just rely on him, but I'd have, 2 or 3 others. But like you say, in a group, he could, at the right matchup, he could be something.
Absolutely. And that's the way I change my approach to putting on to the point. I'm playing the matchups where I can stream, I'll stream, and I'll have the draft be the core of my the running back and the wide receivers are my core, where I can stream on quarterbacks maybe if I did a late round, or maybe if I did a late round tight end where I can stream. I'll find those edges because I know exactly where my team is lacking after the draft and where the strength is of my team. And that is why I think your data is kind of showing why the draft is important. It's not the end all be all, but you need to continue to be active throughout the season. John, thank you so much for tonight. I really wish we had more time because you brought up a great a lot of points. And when we both of us talk process, I will need to invite you back for another show to continue delving into this. So tell our viewers where they can find your work, what they can expect from you, and where they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is at prof, P-R-O-F _fantasy1 on Twitter. Just go to FakePigSkin. I think I've already put about 20 articles out. I do put a lot of articles out, Chris.
Yes.
Put 170-something articles out in the last year or so. So, I own about a fourth of FakePigSkin's output. That's how I measure it. I'm just cranking them out. So definitely Fake Pigskin, and there's a lot of sharp DFS players, not necessarily in football. Bobby Adcock does the golf. He made me some money the other week. Shout out to him. And there's a real broad variety of people there, and that's one of the reasons I like Fake Pigskin. I think it's not clones of each other. We're all kind of independent under a big tent. I really like that. There's obviously Dynasty minds there, right? And the Asylum, two Ricks, they're characters. I don't know if you've heard them, but you need to hear. Those guys are characters. They're doing their last show, making me laugh. They're it's like these people's like, are they crazy or just funny? Yeah. So they leave you wondering. You're never going to be sure. It's like, is this guy crazy or is he funny? What's going on here? So they're good too. So you can find me at Twitter and on Fake Pigskin. And my textbook, which folks, I need to update it. I've been bad because the rankings are stale. I'm going to try to update them in the next couple of weeks. And then, so wait for number 2, or wait till, if your draft's in early September or late August, I'm going to try to put a third out just for keep my rankings a little bit fresher. Unless I had, is Fake Pigskin going to try to do rankings again? We did that last year. I don't know if we're going to do that for the readers this year. I don't know what the big plans are. Nobody.
We'll have a plan. We have a plan in mind. Regan has things set in motion, and we will have a lot more content than people can ask for, and for a low price. For a whole year.
Good.
You can't beat that price for all the contents that we have on Fake Pigskin, and it's not just football, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I like to golf, especially if you're into daily fantasy. I don't know golf, okay? I putt. But if I can make a little money to add to my DraftKings bankroll so I can play some football, then I'm gonna bet NASCAR or whatever. We got some good people there. So I've tripled my bankroll on golf so far this year, so I'm happy. Yeah, awesome. Hey, I'm a small fish fry, not thousands, but, hey, I'll take, go to the bank and try to triple your money, in savings.
Right.
See what they'll do to you. See if the bankers laugh you out the door. If you get 1%, you're happy. They still kick you out the door. But anyway, just remember, whatever system, look at your rate of return. If you can get 50%, that's incredible. I mean, some of the best at some of these, blackjack, they're making 8% an hour or something. That's incredible. People think that's incredible. So if you can do better than that. So check my book out on Kindle. I'll try to update.
Mm-hmm. That'll be on Amazon. Okay. I think.
Yeah, Amazon Kindle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can find a link on John's Twitter profile.
Yeah, my profile.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, wait a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm bad. You can tell I'm not doing this for, big money, or I'd already do it. And I'm not going to shout at you. And I think you'll find my articles that I don't just try to. I'm going to leave a lot there for you to look at. My data is very visual, color coordinated, lots of color, and I don't tell you everything. Part of it is I'm not sure I know everything, and so I try to tell you what I think is apparent, but there's more there that you can speculate on and, use it as a starting point.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again, John, for joining me tonight. I will have you back as soon as I can. Thank you for pumping up our great writers at Fake Pigskin. I'm sure they'll appreciate you, and especially the big shout out to Dave. Dave is receiving way too much credit. Dave and I have this thing going on back and forth.
Hey, Dave's my man. He's my Godzilla guy. That's how we found each other. My avatar was Godzilla, and Dave's a big horror fan too. We're big sci-fi, Game of Thrones. And if you want to talk, try to have he and I on together, and we'll speculate about the last season of Game of Thrones, where when we talk, we start speculating about all the scenarios. So kind of a sci-fi nerd myself, Godzilla fan.
It's
yeah.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
Dave's my man.
Absolutely. Dave's been, I've
Chris.
mentioned plenty of times, my mentor, the guy who got me into the Twitterverse, and I'm very thankful for his contributions, and as well as I am thankful for yours. So
Okay.
thank you so much for tonight, and hope to
Thanks, Chris.
catch you on the Slack
You're
channel.
the man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Good night.